what could sound as quite a convoluted thing to do with sort of social geography of feral cats, which sounds quite fancy. But it's basically about my experiences just watching feral and semi-domestic cats near where I live. That's one. It's a teeny itty bitty kitten.
Sorry, I didn't realize I was.
That's one of a batch of kittens that turned up here recently. This happens pretty much every year. Where I live is on the side of a mountain, about 15 kilometers south of Clonmel, and quite often people will find they have kittens that they didn't think they were going to have, and decide to just kind of leave them on the mountain, and I'm the first thing that they come across. So we have a constant stream of cats, which can vary from 3 or 4 up to the current record is 19 at once. Sometimes they'll turn up as single cats, which then proceed to have a whole bunch of babies, or they can literally just be a cardboard box with 5 kittens in it, or single cats that just turn up. We've been through dozens and dozens and dozens of cats, probably close to 100 now over the last couple of decades. This is one of the most recent ones. It's been named Ahsoka in honor of the bestest Star Wars character ever. And more kitties. So what am I talking about when I talk about social geography of feral cats? What I'm talking about is the cats that as we normally think of them, very often, domestic cats, we think of them as 1s and 2s and 3s, and they usually live in people's houses, and they kind of sit on the sofa and they get fed bowls of food and stuff like that, and they get cuddles and snuggles, and they get shots at the vet and everything. But that's not, surprise, that's not their normal environment. Wild cats and feral cats operate in a different way, and feral cats in particular have this weird situation where they're kind of wild cats, but they're also slightly domesticated. They've kind of learned to stay near humans and stuff. So they operate slightly differently, but they do some really weird stuff, which isn't really obvious unless you watch. One thing I've been looking to see, because I've had large numbers of cats at once, is how they work as a family group and how they use the space as a group, as a family, and as a kind of an extended family community. And one of the best examples of that, I think, is the way they manage safety for the kittens. So, for example, when the kittens first come out to play, when they're kind of little, like the picture of Ahsoka there, they're actually quite at risk, and especially where I am, because we have various hunting birds and we have foxes and all the rest of it running around, and they tend to be hungry and interested in using little kittens as dinner. So the adult cats tend to be fairly careful with them. And it's really, really interesting to see the way they use the space they have. And this is my high-tech diagram of what I'm talking about. What on earth is that, you ask? That is a picture of a garden with walls around it. And there's a shed at one side over there on the left-hand side of where the screen is. Walls around the rest of it, and there's a bench in the middle. And what happens is that the kittens will be out and they'll play in the garden, and that's a safe place, and the cats are comfortable to let the kittens play there because it's got walls around it, and there's wire mesh on the gates, so they know the kittens aren't going to wander off and get lost. But there's also overhanging bushes and trees which kind of protect them from view from above. But what's really interesting about it is the way the cats as an extended family community work together. So when the kittens are playing, you can see this little icon thing that looks vaguely like a badly drawn cat's head, mainly because it is a badly drawn cat's head. On the little bench thing in the middle, there's always a cat sitting watching close by the kittens. And you think, okay, there's the minder. But that's not all. The mommy cat will always sit at a height overlooking the space, usually sitting in bushes or, somewhere similar. And that's her up at the top there with her little crown on, because she's the queen of the castle. And she'll be watching to make sure everything stays okay. And she scowls and she flicks her tail and all the rest of it, because that's my little babies down there. But there are always sentries as well. So we've got one at the bottom there sitting on the wall, and we've got another one over on the left-hand side sitting up on the roof of the shed with a good view over the surrounding area. There's always at least 2 cats watching when the kittens are out. There's usually 3 and sometimes 4. And there's assigned roles for this. And the ones who tend to get the sentry jobs are the younger males. Now there's to use the problematic language, but it's handy here, the alpha male, basically the daddy, if there was one, or the dominant male basically in the group, usually isn't hanging around. They tend to have no interest in it. They go off and do their hunting and go down the gym or whatever it is they do. But the younger males have these sentry jobs. And if the kittens go off somewhere, you'll see one of them jump down and they'll go over and they'll basically stay with that kitten. So it's kind of like a minder job. But the one who sits closest to them is the proper minder, the nanny, if you like. And very often it's an infertile male, funny enough. And what he'll do is he'll fight with them, he'll do chasing games with the kittens, he'll groom them and mind them, and he's always the one who's closest to them. And they'll curl up together and they'll do snuggles together. The thing is, the cats who do all this minding stuff never go out and do hunting. The ones who go out and do the hunting are usually the non-dominant female adults. They'll be sent off and they'll disappear off for 2 or 3 hours, and they'll come back with like a vole or a mouse or something like that to present to the kittens to eat and play with. So they have these clear defined roles, and it's not obvious until you actually get to see the larger group, and usually people don't get to see cats in larger groups like that, but it becomes more obvious in larger groups where you get to see that over a long period of time, and consistently the same cats are playing the same roles. And it's kind of, it's not the obvious thing that you'd expect maybe from when you see little kitties running around and stuff, that there's actually a very, very, very structured social system going on there. And it can be quite brutal at times, where if a cat's not doing its job, the mommy cat will go down and give them a damn good telling off and put them in their place. So that's kind of, if you like, the domestic side of the way things go. When it goes beyond that, and they want to go and move out, and they're going to start going and go hunting, bringing the kittens out on an adventure or whatever it might be, and learn the environment, gets slightly more complex because the space is bigger, and it kind of looks like this. Where we were was up at the top there, which is a garden, which is very well marked. right up at the top of the screen there with those kind of shaded boxes. Now, beside where I am, I've got this river, and there's another river that runs at 90 degrees to it and flows into it. There's a road which goes winding down the page to the bottom left corner there. There's a few other buildings. None of those buildings are occupied. They're all abandoned buildings. So what you'll find is that the dominant male will set up home in one of those other buildings, somewhere nearby, but not part of the family group. When they all bring the kittens out, because they do when they're young, and they bring them up the road and bring them for an explore to go and find out what the place looks like and where to go hunting and how to go and catch a mouse and stuff like that. It'll always be the mother who leads the group. She'll bring the kittens, and if there's, say, 4 or 5 kittens, she might only bring 2 or 3 at a time. But there'll always be that main minder cat will always come with them. And I'll go off and I'll go for a wander around in the woods and search around, so on. And that kind of makes sense. You think, okay, well, there's the mother. She's got a vested interest in these kittens, and you've got this other cat who's the minder, and you'd expect them to kind of get involved. And what's not always obvious is you suddenly notice all the other non-dominant males aren't around. Where are they? I haven't seen them all day. What they're doing is the same job. They're basically kind of like scouts or satellites, and they'll float around the outside, maybe like 30, 40 meters away, just wandering around in the countryside nearby. What they're doing is they're looking out for risks and threats and opportunities and so on, and just keeping the whole thing safe. So they're kind of like border guards floating around and just keeping everyone safe while the little convoy goes on a little adventure. And then when they come back again, they will suddenly appear again out of nowhere. And it's fascinating to watch them, particularly when you get new generations growing up, or one of the older cats dies or moves away, and you get that repositioning, and all of a sudden somebody you think, oh, they're not an important cat at all. Suddenly they're one of the most important cats. Suddenly they become the dominant cat. When you think back, you think, well, hang on, actually they were being taught and groomed into this role by the predecessor. When you only look at the way they were being dealt with and the roles they were being given, suddenly, that makes sense now. That suddenly makes sense. And you see all the other cats shift in their positions and their allegiances. And one of the things the cats do in particular, and it's the dominant female who's the focus of this, is they'll get the 2 cat heads. I'll try and position myself differently so you can see there's 2 cat heads, right? This is the dominant female, and this is another adult cat. When they meet, the heads will go down, and they do this gentle headbutt thing like that. And that's a sign of, it's kind of like a hug, salute, handshake combined. It's a sign of respect, and all the cats will do it. You'll see the cats walking over, and they'll, when they come back from a hunt or something, they'll come back, and the first thing they'll do is they'll go over to the main adult cat, and they'll just headbutt and just say, yeah, I've come back, I've done my job, I've fulfilled my responsibility, as an acknowledgement. And there's one little twist on that, which is the adult females whose job is to go out and hunt. When they come back, they will do that, but then they will go and do a kind of a stroke along the side. So again, dodging my head out of the way, if this is the main adult female and this is the other female, they'll head bump, but then the other one will walk past and stroke their fur against the side of the adult female. None of the males ever do that. None of the kittens ever do that. It's always just the hunter females who will do that with the dominant cat. And it's such a hierarchical society. It's so well rigidly structured almost, and there's like this very well planned out succession and all the rest of it, and everyone's got their little roles and jobs and all the rest. You wouldn't really want to be a cat if you're into sort of free living and adventure and going your own way and individualism, because it's a very heavily structured society. I just thought it was a really interesting thing to watch it and observe. Not really something that people necessarily have got a million questions about, or that changes the course of human history, but it's just an interesting observation on something.